You got the flag suit in there? Is there a flag suit sign in there? All right, so I'll do it. Yeah.
It's straight.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the buyer representation and broker compensation form training. Before we get started, I'm gonna have you all stand up. We're gonna do the flag salute real quick. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hoorah! All right, let's go. Hey, we can't have training without sponsors, so I can feed you guys. So without further ado, we have Cutco. Julian, come on up.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Julian Landry. I'm with Cutco Closing Gifts. So who in here gives closing gifts? So throw out some common closing gifts. What are some common things y'all do? Liquor, home warranty, gift baskets. Was that? Services. So one common thing with most gifts is where are they at 30, 60, 90 days later? They're usually ate, spent, drank, gone, forgotten about. And if they're not serving you long-term or your clients long-term, then they're likely not serving you and your business long-term. Now, a couple of years ago, NAR did a study and they found that 90% of clients said they would use their realtor again if they could only remember their name. Does anyone know how many can remember their name after just 2 years? 10%? Yeah, it's around 10%. It's like 10, 12%. After 5 years, the number drops to 5%. Now, we think there's a couple reasons for that. They just can't remember your name. You're not top of mind. Now, who in here owns any Cutco products? Now, keep your hands raised if you owned your Cutco for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. How long have you owned them for? What do you think? Over 10 years? Okay, great. Now, if you think about that, like most gifts, like a bottle of wine, a gift basket, how many of them even have potential to last a year, much less 10 years? Now, if you're not familiar with Cutco, the product's made in the USA. It's guaranteed forever. It's literally one of the best guarantees across any product line. And it's just a phenomenal product. So you can pretty much guarantee when you give someone that product, they're going to use it for years and years to come. What we do with the knives is we take them, we brand them with your info. We put your logo, your name, your number right on the product itself. Or we do a tagline like sharpest realtor in town, your realtor for life. Or last year, a bunch of people were like, please stop cutting my commission, their name and number. Just kidding. Don't do that. So what that does is it makes it a permanent dishwasher safe business card. And if you think about it, the kitchen is the most used room in the home. So your realtor might not be like a common conversation to be having when you're sitting around the dinner table, but when they have that knife, your name is naturally going to be talked about and brought up. 38% of transactions are done by referral, so you're much more likely to be referred when you're more top of mind and talked about with their friends and family. Now, does anyone know what the IRS allows you to write off for a client gift? $50. $50 you can combine husband and wife get creative, but generally it's $25. That's all you're allowed to write off. So that'll get you like a Happy Meal nowadays. So most people spend more than that and write it off, or they just don't get the write-off that they deserve. So because our gifts are engraved with your info, they're actually 100% tax deductible. You're not limited to that $25 gift write-off. You can write off the full amount and get the write-off that you deserve. Now, I found that most realtors have a system in place for closing gifts, and it's like wait till the last minute. Has anyone ever done that before? Wait till the last minute, run around, go get a gift card, gift basket, to something easy. What we do is we make this a system in place for your business. We figure out how many gifts you'll need over the next 6 to 12 months. We ship them to you in one box, and then we bill you over 6 months or 12 months interest-free. So that way, whenever you have a closing, you just grab the gift, you put a bow on it, which we also provide, hand it to your client, you're done, move on. System in place saves you more time, energy, and stress, so you can focus on doing what you do best, buying and selling real estate. So that's pretty much it as far as today. So what I want to have you do, I put these forms at your table. Actually, Eileen did. Thank you very much for put these forms at your table. So if you have one at your table, just go ahead and fill it out. You're going to want to fill it out, write your name, number, and email on it. We have some great quantity discounts. If you turn this in today, if you have closings coming up, you're behind in your gift giving or need to reorder, you turn this in, we got some great quantity discounts. Or if you're not ready to order, but you just want me to stay in touch with you for whenever you are ready, turn it in. I'll make sure to get you all the info you need. Also, the first 3 people that ordered today, I'm also going to buy you $200 of Cutco for your home in addition to the quantity discounts that we have going today. So again, you don't have to buy the full amount today. We split up over 6 months. We got great quantity discounts. Also, the first 3 will get $200 of Cutco for your home ordering today. That's it. I am going to end with a quote. It's not your client's job to remember you. It's your obligation and responsibility to make sure they don't have a chance of forgetting you. And don't celebrate closing a sale, celebrate opening up a relationship. And what better way to do that than by giving them a gift that is going to last forever. The end.
God. Yeah, I bought some Cutco a couple years ago. They're still around. All right, let's go. I gotta pull it through there. That's me. Hey, sign in real quick, guys, so I can get a head count. And the DRE knows that I've had training on the form. Okay. Huh?
We'll resend out the QR code at the end.
I think if you RSVP, then it's not letting me.
Okay, so you're gonna send it out again. I just really need that for the DRE, okay, guys? Just promise me that. Hey, just give you a little rundown of how things are gonna go. I'm gonna give my presentation on what I've learned. Some answers I got back. I was on the phone with the attorney again today. Actually, this attorney from CAR was a much nicer. Her name was Olivia. So you remember nice people. And so had some great conversations with her regarding some questions that were asked last time regarding the listing agreement. So we'll save all the questions to the end. If you have any questions that you want to address, make sure you write them down and then get it over to Eileen. Eileen will be going around. Okay. All right. Residential listing agreement. So last time on the residential listing agreement, we talked about compensation. So you guys are gonna be doing compensation, right? So you have this a listing side of the compensation. That's what the listing agent will be paid, right? And so my question was on the additional compensation the seller's broker for his buyers unrepresented. So I was having a hard time understanding why they put the commission back into the purchase agreement when offers of compensation are not consideration for an offer, right? And can anybody guess why that's not the same? So they put compensation back into the purchase agreement, talking about compensation, right? Well, they took that out of years ago, and because offers of compensation cannot be a consideration of the offer. And so I had a hard time wrapping my head around why would they put it back into the purchase agreement where they talk about compensation. Well, they did. They've always talked about compensation, but now it's different. So consideration of compensation can't be from broker to broker. So now what's happening? How are we doing it? Well, it's between the buyer and the seller. So the buyer is asking the seller to pay their broker. So it's not the listing agent. So that's where that got cleared up for me. And because I thought the additional compensation of seller's broker, if buyer is unrepresented. So the way this works right here is her example was this. Say you have a listing and you have an investor that says, you know what? I don't want to be represented. I want to get the best bang for my buck. And the seller says, they want to present an offer. So you have to take that offer to your seller and say they don't want to be represented. Right. So now what do you have to do? What is your obligation as the agent in that transaction, as the listing agent? Well, no, there's no the way because you're not going to get paid to represent because that buyer specifically stated they did not want to be represented. Right. You have to present the offer. So the offer is, so you go to your seller and say, listen, they don't want to be represented, and this is their offer. They don't have an agent, they don't want to be represented. So they're an investor, say, right? Trying to get. So now what do you have to do? You as the listing agent have to prepare all the paperwork, right? And you have to get what they call a buyer non-agency. We talked about the buyer non-agency form that you have to get signed. So it's known that you are not representing the buyer. Well, in situations like that, this 4Cs comes into play. So when you take the listing, you say, seller, hey, there might be a chance that somebody comes in and says that they don't want to be represented, but I still got to open the house for them. I still got to get paperwork for them. So for that, I'm going to charge an additional fee. And that's what you put in there. Yes.
Bill, I understand that. We recommend that we add that to our listing agreement.
Every single time. So that's a great question, Cheryl. So what I want you guys to do is I want you to put 3, right? And then 3 if you can. All right. If you get 2.5, that's fine. But I want to make sure that you guys are filling that out properly. So make sure that you put that in the listing agreement in both spaces. So if that does happen, where a buyer comes up and says, I don't want to be represented, you will be compensated by the seller for doing that additional work. Does everybody got clarity on that now? All right. No questions? Yeah, it took me a little while to wrap my head around it because additional compensation, that's got to be this the other side, but it's not. You're getting paid to do additional work. So, and you're not representing the buyer, which is kind of cool. You're getting paid extra and you don't have the liability, because what will happen is if a lawsuit happens, and say there was a buyer and then a lawsuit happens, they hire an attorney, they're going after you, and they're going to go after you because you represented them, or they assume that you represented them. So when you have the buyer's non-agency sign, you got it in writing. Hey, listen, I don't represent you. You're representing yourself. All I'm doing is helping you with the paperwork, getting the paperwork to you. Buyer non-agency, yes. So, all right, let's move forward. Okay. Buyer representation, broker compensation. What is it and how do we use it? Did we go too far? Okay. So A1 is a representation period. Make sure you add in the dates to enforce the length of the contract. Okay. The length of the contract. What's the length of the contract? 3 months. Can't be more than 3 months, right? Type representation. By checking off exclusive and getting client initials in paragraph 15, it ensures the exclusivity of the contract. We want exclusive representation, all right? It's not a unilateral cancellation. It's a bilateral cancellation, not exclusivity. You're good for 30 days. You're good for 3 months on there. Next slide.
If it is non-exclusive, then they have multiple agents to be represented.
Yes, they can. So they can go out and choose you and choose any other agent,
Whoever writes the offer.
whoever writes the offer. So you're not exclusive. That's the way that's the law that they're going to put in there. Yeah, you can extend it. You can only extend it. There's an extension that you can do an extension for the buyer representation. Okay, B1, if the properties being shown are single family, condominium, manufactured homes, nothing needs to be checked. However, check the box that applies outside that scope on this part, on B1. So you just identify what type of property they're going to be looking for. Okay. Yes. Say that one more time. Yes, they can. You can identify more than one. Okay. Okay, B2, it is recommended to check counties to cover a larger area to be covered. So what I would recommend is that when you check the area, check the county current. If you're going to be doing current, or whatever county they're going to be looking in, but most likely it's going to be current. Okay.
They have multiple, would it be better in California? As opposed to,
Well, the way the form reads right now, it's got just county and cities. And I don't think you want, I mean, you got somebody going, yeah.
We have two questions at the end, or we need to have a mic, the Zoom lens.
Because the Zoom people can't hear the question.
Yeah, yeah. So we're gonna, because they can't hear it on the Zoom, so we're gonna write down your questions, like I said, and at the end, we'll go over them. That way, with the mic, they can hear the questions, okay? All right, thanks, guys. Okay, so moving next. Broker compensation. Okay, why don't you just move it? Just keep moving them. And, okay, so notice the amount of rate real estate commissions is not fixed by law. They're set by each broker individually and may be negotiable between buyer and broker. See attached buyer broker compensation advisory. So E1, 4B you must enter an amount of the compensation. Percent or an amount. Now I will tell you something else. And I haven't done it yet. I'm in the process with our legal counsel. See that part where it says see attached compensation schedule? As of right now, you're leaving that blank. And the reason being is think of it this way. So this agreement is for only a listing side broker. But what if Nick brings me an offer and I'm the listing agent? So what Nick essentially has to do is he has to be like an outside broker, come in and his offer, he has to have a buyer broker compensation. Well, what I want to do is inside our office is have a compensation schedule with how our agents inside the office will operate. So if it's a dual agency on that compensation, I haven't got that done yet. So for right now, your standard practice is this, just like an outside agent. So if Mike Saba wants to write an offer on Nick's listing, Mike's going to write an offer and he's going to have this form filled out with the requested commission amount. Okay. Buyer financial and personal information. I highly recommend that you get this filled out and that you make sure the buyer that you're walking or that you're showing property to, that they are able to purchase a home and pay your fee. Because the attorney from CAR told me what could happen is you write the offer and you request commission and the seller says no and the buyer can't pay you, then you're out and the buyer still gets the property. No, it's if the buyer cannot afford, that's why you need to fill this out and verify that the buyer can purchase without. But if the seller doesn't have to pay this, the selling broker, doesn't have to pay him. Yeah. So with that, if the buyer still wants to pursue and make the offer, right? You as a listing agent have to show the offer and the seller can accept that offer. The only agreement they have is with the listing agent, and then you'd be out. So it's like you want to have this, you want to do your homework or make sure that the buyer can purchase. It's just like pre-qualifying a buyer in a loan, right? Same deal. You want to make sure that they're qualified, because if you don't and you present that offer and the seller says, because you think the seller is going to pay your commission, but the seller says, I'm not going to pay your commission, right? I'm not going to pay the selling side commission. And the buyer says, I still want the house, then the seller can accept that offer and go forward from there. That's what the attorney said to me this morning. Yeah, hey, hold on to your question. All
I
right.
just wouldn't think the contract would be valid. If they can't accept that contract because we're asking for commission, they would have to go write another offer.
What's stopping the buyer from going to do the seller?
Right. I mean, they can go do it,
Yeah,
but,
you
but,
know.
but my offer, they can't accept because it includes my commission.
Mhm. Yeah, as far as you're talking about so you need to make sure the buyer can pay your commission, right? What about non-exclusive? Yeah, then you're out.
I just feel like there would have to be another offer written. Because that offer says you're going to pay me if you accept this offer. If the seller won't pay me, then go write another offer. But yeah, I mean, we're all taking a chance with every offer we write.
Yeah,
I
so
get it.
I just think the standard practice says, if you're writing an offer, you get the exclusive, agreement with that buyer, right? You want to fill out that form that proves that they have the ability to purchase and pay your commission. Right? Or you're taking that risk. Okay, commonly asked questions. Are buyer representation agreements required? Well, yes and no. Today, no. On the 15th, they are with our MLS, right? If you belong to our MLS, and not till the first of the year by law. We're going to pass it by law. So by law, but we're going to do it as of today. We are going to start filling out these forms when we're representing buyers as an office. Okay. So when all MLS participants who are working with a buyer must enter into a written agreement, the buyer, before the buyer tours any home, this is required by the terms of NAR settlement. As of the first year, this will be required by law. Under the BRBC, a buyer and broker can enter into an exclusive or non-exclusive relationship. What's the difference? And I've already gone over this a little bit with you. Under a non-exclusive agreement, which the BRBC defaults to unless stated otherwise in A2 4B, a prerequisite to the broker earning compensation is that there must be broker involvement with the property. Anybody give me an example of what broker involvement would be? Showing them the house, right? Getting them qualified, meeting with them. Under an exclusive agreement, broker has a right to compensation even if the buyer acts alone or with a different broker in a buying property during the representation period. So to answer your question, we want exclusive representation because we don't want signing agreements where they're signing multiple agreements, they're not guaranteed to get paid. All right. Unilateral cancellation under a non-exclusive agreement is effective immediately upon receipt of the cancellation notice, unless otherwise agreed in the BRBC. While unilateral cancellation under an exclusive agreement is not effective until 30 days after the receipt of notice. So what does that mean? Can they cancel a non-exclusive agreement at any time? Can they cancel a exclusive agreement? But they got to give you a 30-day notice. Okay. So everybody's good on that, right? All right. How do you make the BRBC an exclusive agreement? The box in paragraph 2A, 2, must be checked. But additionally, the buyer must initial the exclusive representation box on paragraph 15 of the BRBC. So you mark the exclusive, right? And then you have the buyer initial the part where it talks about exclusive representation. And it says, exclusive representation, if checked in paragraph 2A, initialed by buyer here, this agreement shall be exclusive. Brokers will devote time and resources to assist buyer in finding and acquiring property in the expectation of being paid for buyer broker services. Buyer shall not enter into another representation agreement in conflict with this agreement. Compensation. Broker is entitled to compensation if buyer acquires property during the representation period with or without broker involvement, even with another broker, is also entitled to be paid for representing the buyer. Cancellation. Either buyer or broker may unilaterally cancel this agreement by giving the other 30 days written notice. If within 5 days of the effective date of that cancellation, broker provides buyer with a list of properties for which there was broker involvement, broker may still be entitled to compensation. If buyer purchases one of those properties during the listing period or during the listing representation period or the continuation period specified in paragraph 2E. So what does that mean? So if you have an agreement with a buyer, right? And it cancels, whether it's a exclusive or non-exclusive agreement. What should you do as a standard of practice? Have the list of properties you showed them within 5 days. So the cancellation within 5 days, keep the list of homes you showed them and give it to them. Hey, if you buy any of these houses within time specified, then I'm due a commission. All right. So it's a little protection there. It's like this listing, the listing agreement. The listing agreement has the same thing where, they stop hallway negotiations. Everybody knows what hallway negotiations are, right? It's where the seller stops a buyer in the hallway and says, hey, listen, this is canceling in 2 days. Come see me and you get a better deal. That's what they stops that. So no hallway negotiating. What does broker involvement mean under the BRBC? Broker involvement under the BRBC. Okay, so broker involvement, wherever used in this agreement, means any of the following. Buyer physically entered and was shown the property by the broker. Broker showed the property to the buyer virtually. Broker submitted to seller and signed a written offer from the buyer to acquire, lease, exchange, or obtain an option on the property. Broker performed a market analysis related to the property or reviewed property-specific documents or disclosures with the buyer. The property was introduced to the buyer broker or one for which a broker acted on the buyer's behalf. However, merely sending a buyer list of properties shall not be deemed broker involvement without documented action on the part of the broker analyzing the property for buyer specifically or assisting a buyer in the potential acquisition of the property or communicating with the seller or seller's agent regarding buyer's potential acquisition of the property. So what does that mean? So look at that sentence where it says buyer, however, merely sending a buyer a list of properties shall not be deemed broker involvement without documented action as a part of the broker analyze. How can you send them a list of properties? How can you document it? Email, right? What about on the showing desk? Print out a list of appointments made with those properties that you had. That's documentation also, right? Yeah.
So let's say a buyer goes to an open house without you, they just saw the sign and they go in and they.
Well, that's an exclusive. So if you have an exclusive, right? So I think you're protected. Yeah. We're going to go over open houses. Okay. All right. Must the buyer identification of preferences and priorities, the BIP, be attached to the BRBC? No. The agreement is effective without it. However, it will serve the important purpose of providing details as to the type of the property the buyer is looking to buy. It is separate from the main body of the BRBC in order to account for the fact that the buyer preferences will often change as our property search goes on. A new BIP is intended to replace and supersede any previous ones. So a new BIP is to replace or supersede any previous ones. Okay. Am I entitled to compensation if, after notice of cancellation of the BRBC, the buyer enters into a contract to purchase property for which there was broker involvement prior to the effective date of the cancellation? It depends. Under the BRBC, yes, if the broker provides the buyer with a written list of properties for which there was broker involvement, which must be delivered to the buyer within 5 calendar days after the effective date of cancellation. The notice of broker involved properties, NBIP, that's the NBIP, can be used for this purpose. But the answer is no. If the broker does not deliver the list on time, or if the property acquired was not on the list. Okay. So the NBIP, notice of broker involved properties. I would use it. I mean, they made the form for a reason. So I mean, I think you're better protected by utilizing their forms, because I thought a lot of thought went into this, when all this started. So it's not mandatory, but I would as standard practice, I would use it. Okay, my buyer is refusing to sign the BRBC. Is there a simpler version of the BRBC? Yes, there is. There is a property showing representation agreement, the PSRA. The PSRA. It has many of the features of the BRBC, but is much shorter and simpler. The main differences between the PSRA and the BRBC are. These are the differences between the two. The PSRA cannot last longer than 30 days. It can only be non-exclusive. It has a space for identifying only 3 properties. And it may be canceled at any time. I'll just say that one more time. The difference between the PSRA and the BRBC are as follows. The PSRA cannot last longer than 30 days. It can only be non-exclusive. It has a space for identifying only 3 properties, and it may be canceled at any time. How do I ensure that I will actually receive my agreed upon compensation? It's a great question, right? Payment through escrow. Okay. Buyer hereby irrevocably assigns to broker the compensation provided in this agreement from buyer's funds in escrow. Buyer agrees to submit to escrow any funds needed to compensate the broker under the agreement. Broker may submit this agreement as instructions to compensate broker to any escrow regarding property involving buyer and a seller or other transferor. In paragraph 4E of the BRBC, the buyer irrevocably assigns to the broker compensation. Right? In paragraph 18 of the RPA, the buyer agrees to pay the broker as specified in their agreement, and that amount is payable upon the close of escrow. And in paragraph 19D of the RPA, escrow agrees, 1, to pay the compensation due as long as the agreement is provided to escrow, and 2, that compensation disbursement is irrevocable. Everybody understand that? Huh? Irrevocable. Irrevocable. Does the BRBC need to be approved by agents, broker, or office manager to be binding on the broker? No, but it must be submitted as soon as possible. However, much like the listing agreement, the broker or manager has 5 days to cancel the BRBC if they do not approve of the terms. Individual agents, broker, or agents or broker associates should provide their brokerage with a copy of the BRBC as soon as possible once obtaining the buyer's signature. A copy of the BRBC must be submitted within 48 hours of property going pending. Okay, so let me expand on it because some of this is law and some of this is Bill's law. Okay, so the fact is this must be submitted with all offers. You must have this to show property, and you must have it when you submit your offers, right? Now, or one of the 4 forms. Now, what I'm telling you is this. I have a huge problem in this office with agents that have broker load that don't submit their pendings until right before it closes. That is no longer, you can no longer do that. You get a pending. Some of you have outside TCs, which I can appreciate, and I don't have a problem with that. But you need to educate your TCs that when I have an offer that's accepted and I give it to you, you need to upload it into our system at the office within 48 hours or I'm going to get in trouble. You need, because it's going to be submitted with your offer. So you get an offer accepted, 48 hours, within 48 hours, you have your TC, or you, if you're doing broker load, upload it into the system. You got 2 days to do that. We've had a lot of agents, rogue agents, an agent sent out emails wanting credit for closing on, and the statement the agent made was, I work with a lot of investors and I usually turn in my pendings until after they close. They can't do that, guys. cannot do that. Just figure this, broker load is a luxury, right? It is a privilege that I let you have. I give up a lot of responsibility, and I'm giving that responsibility to you. We have it with full service. We provide that, but you have to submit your pendings within 48 hours of getting an offer accepted into our system. 48 hours of getting an offer accepted, it must be inputted into our system. So talk to your TCs, and for those of you who do it on your own, you got 48 hours. Does everybody understand that? We good? Okay. It does too, is eliminates those, when I have sales meetings and I do top production and the agent goes up to me and goes, I sold more than that. Well, how the hell do I know if you didn't turn it in? You got to turn it in. So, but make sure you got 48 hours. All right. This is one open houses post NAR settlement. How's that going to work? Can a listing agent hold an open house after the implementation of the NAR settlement? Yes. Nothing in an NAR settlement precludes hosting an open house. Is an agent holding an open house required to have every visitor who enters the open house sign a registration log sheet, a non-agency agreement, a buyer representation agreement? It depends. Depends on whether any of these documents are required. Depends on the interaction of the agent and the visitor. But ideally, the listing agent will have one of these forms signed for the purpose of clarifying the relationship. And the good news is that CAR has 4 different forms to help with these situations. 4 different forms to help with these situations. First is the open house visitor non-agency disclosure and sign-in, the ONAC. Number 2 is the buyer non-agency agreement, the BNA. Number 3, buyer representation and broker compensation agreement. And number 4, property showing and representation agreement, the PSRA. Those are one of the 4 forms. Should all visitors to the property sign in using the ONAC? This is a best practice. Ask all adult visitors to sign in. By doing so, the visitor will be acknowledging that the agent at the open house is acting on behalf of the seller and is not representing the buyer. The visitor can also use the ONAC to identify if they are working with another agent. So the open house agent or the listing agent will know who to contact about future discussions about the visitor's interest in the property. What if the visitor refuses to sign anything, but instead only wants to look at the property? What do? You kick them out. Now, signing the ONAC is not a condition of entering an open house. In this circumstance, it is advisable that the open house agent to be guarded in their discussions. You do not want to create an implied or inadvertent agency, but merely talking to the buyer while making it clear that you're representing the seller and not the buyer does not likely constitute working with a buyer, which would require a written buyer agreement. If the visitor asks for information beyond what is contained in the information sheet, the open house agent should tell the visitor they cannot provide such information unless the visitor is willing to sign in. The listing agent may simply provide the buyer with the buyer non-agency agreement, the form BNA. This will help document the fact of non-agency. Even if the buyer does not sign it, providing it should prevent an agency implication. It's a lot. We got a lot going on. Standards of practice. it's gonna take a little while to get used to it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open it up for questions right now. We have some questions. I think already documented right here. Okay, so when will this form be required to be submitted to Watson? Today, starting today, we want you to start utilizing this form when working with a buyer. When we get it signed, or only when an offer has been executed. So you're not gonna, once an offer's been executed, then you'll upload the form. It's not needed to be uploaded into the form because you're gonna have these for showing multiple properties. But you're gonna want to make sure that this form is not submitted until you have an accepted offer. And how much time do you have after accepted offer? 40 hours. There you go. Good job. Also regarding open houses, will the sign-in sheet be required by Watson? We are asking that you require that at your open houses. We're asking that you require that at your open house. It does a couple of things. It protects you. The biggest thing is the assumption of agency. The assumption of agency. And you want to make sure you get one of those four things taken care of. You can utilize one of those four forms when you have it. So make sure you have those four forms. And when you do an open house and try, well, best great thing about it, if you can get the buyer broker representation form signed, then that would be a good one. But they have other ones where they're non-agency, they're not. So but you're educating them on what you can do, what you can say, and so on. Buyer does not have sufficient funds to pay and broker refuses to sign this form. So if the broker does not, or the buyer does not have sufficient funds to pay and the broker refuses to sign the form, then you don't have the form. You're not getting paid. Yeah. Could you give an example of how you would present the BRC or BRBC to your buyer client? Is that for me?
Yeah.
Anyone know how I do it? Well, for one, I would say it's MLS rules. You can't show you property right now. And and this all goes into consultation when you're meeting with a buyer. It's a game changer, guys. They're actually showing you how why you're being paid, and you got to show your value. So you actually have to you got to sit down, show them how the buying from. When was the last time you had a buyer and you walked them through the contract? Hey, first time home buyer. Hey, listen, just want to let you know I know it's a little intimidating, but we're going to get you the American dream. And this is how it's going to go down. Well, first of all, I'm going to have you sign a buyer broker agreement. And in that agreement, it says that I'm going to work exclusively with you and you're going to work exclusively with me. Now, the way that works right now, guys, or a buyer, is the law, well, it's not the law yet, but the RMLS requires it, and it's soon to be a law. And what's going to happen is I'm going to ask for the seller to pay for to pay me to represent you in the transaction. He may or may not do that. If he doesn't, then I'm going to ask you to pay my fee. And this is what my fee is. If it's less, then it'll be less. But it won't be more than the fee that we put on this form. Are you okay with that? And then you say yes or no, depending on how you present it. But it's going to take your skill level. You have to ratchet up your skill level. And the guys, I had an agent come to my office yesterday, and she came in. She goes, Bill, at first I was really scared about this form, and I thought, what are they trying to do to us? And then after I started thinking about it and thinking about what we're actually doing, it's going to weed out the bad agents, right? And it's going to be a good thing. I think it's going to be a good thing for our industry, because those people that have no skill, that don't know how to show value, are going to go bye. You got to be a real estate. You got to be a real estate professional at a high level, and that's what we produce at Watson. So I'm not afraid of it, because I know you guys can do it. Yeah.
I was thinking we could get paid more.
Yeah, so that's funny you said that, because that's another thing she brought up. Because you got these guys who are putting $1,500 of compensation on the selling side. Now you don't have to worry about that. You call and you negotiate your own, and you get in front of that. You present that offer. Now I will tell you guys this. Back in the day, we used to present offers directly to the seller in person. People got away with it, ever since a fax machine, really, where they could just fax offers over. And then the internet came, right? And they could email offers. But you actually used to sit down in front of the seller with the listing agent and present your offer. You know, you can still do that. You can still do that. The only way they can stop you from doing that. So I see this practice. I see people doing this more often. I see them getting in front of the seller because the listing agent can't tell you no. The only way a listing agent can tell you no is by a letter from the seller saying they don't want any offers presented. So I think a lot of times we forget that we are not principals in the transaction. I think we forget that we are not principals in the transaction. You need to, as agents, as real estate professionals, what you must remember at all times is you got to take the word we out of your vocabulary unless your name's on the deed. No, we don't want to take this. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. No, it's not you. It's them, right? And you always, I had an agent say, called me the other day on a listings saying, will your seller entertain seller financing? I go, I don't know. I go, I know you say it'll take conventional financing. I do know that. She goes, well, can you find out? I go, no, write up an offer. Write up an offer and let's present the offer and let them make the decision. Because what's going to happen is you get say, you just do it verbally. The seller says one thing over the phone. You never want to talk it over the phone. And then, after a while, but until they get an offer, they act differently when they get an offer in front of them. Sellers act differently all the time. They'll tell you one thing and do a totally different thing. Oh, I'll never go below 400. And they take an offer for 350. How many times have you seen that? So you got to take the word we out of your vocabulary. You got to get in front of them, right? Present your offers. And this is a great leeway to being able to do that. To this day, I still present my offers. I don't represent buyers that much anymore, but when I represent a buyer, I do call a listing agent, present my offer. Because it's my acceptance rate goes through the roof when you present your offer. Because who's not doing it? The other guys. The other guys aren't doing it. They're not presenting their offers. And then you get the agent that says, I'm too busy. Well, you got to present the offer sometime. And I got nothing but time. So do yourself a favor, learn this document, start utilizing it as of today, show your value as an agent representing a buyer and what is entailed. Because how many times they said, you guys get paid for doing nothing. How many times they think you hear from a buyer, hey, why don't you put some of your commission to help the deal make? How many times they go after your commission? You know why they do that? Because they don't think you're worth it. They don't think you're worth the commission you're getting paid. Today, you're going to show them. Today, you're going to start showing them that you're worth every single dime. And you're going to show them how you're going to take care of them. You're going to uphold your fiduciary commitment to them. You're going to write that offer. You're going to present that offer. You're going to get that offer accepted. You're going to negotiate that offer on their behalf. You have two main jobs as an agent who represents a buyer. Does anybody know what those jobs are? Locate and negotiate. Locate the property of their dreams and negotiate on their behalf and to get them to home. That's your job. And what are you doing to do that to make sure that you're performing at a high level? And the only person you have to blame when you don't get an offer accepted is yourself. Because you need to go in there negotiating strongly on behalf of your buyer. Because that's what has happened to our industry over these years. People think, that we get paid a lot for doing nothing. Well, that's not the case anymore. You're going to get out in front of there. You're going to be a high professional. You're going to write up contracts. You're going to negotiate. You're going to be strong in your value, and you're going to get offers accepted. And you're going to negotiate your fee. We have another question.
You want to read those off soon?
Let's go read the ones off Zoom first. Do we need to write the requested buyer broker commission into the RPA as well as submitting the BRBC?
Say that one more time.
Is that there?
Yeah.
Do we need to write the requested buyer broker commission into the RPA as well submitting the BRBC?
Yes, you do.
Does our MLS allow for stating if seller is considering concession to buyer? If so, can a dollar amount be stated?
No. Dollar amount cannot be stated. If the seller's offering seller concession, seller concession can't state an amount. Stay away from stating an amount. Oh, and so another thing too, I want to bring up. I was talking to the attorney today because I had. You're going to see you're gonna see people trying to get around the rules that every time there's new rules, people look for ways to not abide by the rules. Right? Why abide by the rules at a high level? That's where I am. And so it makes me sleep at night. And so but as far as compensation is, whether a seller, the MLS is the only one that's prohibited from putting cooperating commission in there. Right? Seller is now, on flyers on your website and everything like that, you can do that. But I'm telling you, don't do it. Do not do it. You can put the seller was willing to do concessions, but you're not going to say that the seller's willing to cooperate with selling broker on your website, on any social media or anything like that. That's an automatic no. And the reason being is they're looking for people to go after. Do you realize that lawsuit? Does anybody know how much that lawsuit was? Yes, over 4 billion. You know how much those attorneys got? They got 40% of it. They got 40% of that 4 billion. And there was like 6 of them. Right? Or 4, it was 4. Well, they had assistants. But anyway, they got 4 billion. You don't think somebody else is looking at, and you know what Watson is? Watson's the #1 company in town. Watson's the biggest company in town. You don't think they're going to try and look for it? You guys are under the microscope. They're going to look for a test case. So we're staying away from that. You can say that the seller's willing to give concessions, but you cannot say the seller's willing to cooperate with the selling broker. Nothing about compensation. Now, I will tell you this. In the office, amongst us, you can talk about it all day long. You can talk about it all day long. In your office is a safe place, just like commissions. You go in there, if I go, Fernando, hey man, so you got this listing, how much will the seller, what is the seller willing to cooperate? Can't tell me how much, not supposed to, right? But you say, yeah, he's willing, Bill. Now, then I know I'm going in, that he's gonna maybe able to get my fee out of that. All right?
You would be to this. that-
I totally agree with you. And that's a conversation you have with the listing agreement. When you have that listing agreement. Hey, I'm going to let you know, seller, that most buyers out there, a good percentage of them can't afford to pay their closing costs are down and their agent's commission. And typically the fees worked into the sales price anyways. So with that being said, you can expect an agent's going to come and ask you to pay for the.
Circumstances that we chose today, the seller originally planned to pay that commission income.
Yeah. I know.
First, so we told them just to be patient.
Okay. Okay, what's the next one?
If after signing a PSRA and showing the property, can I then have the buyer sign an exclusive representation BRBC at the time of writing an offer to ensure my commission on that property?
Yes.
Okay. Question, the BRBC must be submitted to our system within 48 hours, but do we also send the BRBC with our offer to the listing agent and seller?
Yes. At the time you present the offer.
Can you please explain the DMLA?
Oh, that's the modification of the listing agreement? Yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory.
Okay, next
Yeah, all
question.
you're doing is changing the terms of the listing agreement. Yeah. Yes, all it is you're modifying your listing agreement to say whether or not you can do terms, date, compensation, so on. But yes. Okay, now we're doing the room.
Page 5 of the BRBC under number 16. Let's say I submitted an offer and obviously I defaulted to 3% commission. Listing agent called me and say, hey, my listing agreement only shows 4%. I'm giving you 1.5. So can I ask a copy of that listing agreement?
You cannot
So how would I know that the listing agent is telling the truth?
present your offer in person. Yeah, you can't, that's a contract between the seller and the listing agent, you cannot, the only one that can get a copy of a listing agreement is a judge. The Bakersfield Association of Realtors is CEO, right? And that's pretty much it.
And the listing agent, send a CBC to modify the.
CBC's gone. No more CBC. Okay. Next question.
Okay, just for clarity on B1, where the property type. So I've heard this both ways, so I just wanted clarity. If a box is not checked and my buyer decides to buy land, but it's not checked, this is not good for that offer, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
That's
so
correct.
that's why
That's why you're
check
gonna mark-
all
yeah,
that
Yeah.
may or may
Yeah,
not apply.
exactly.
And the second thing is for continued right to payment on E3, what is your recommended time limit, or is there a time limit?
As far as, say that one more time?
So on the continuation right to payment, E3, does that have a max time limit?
Yeah, it's just a safety clause, so.
So are
Uh,
you recommend, what do you,
Okay, yeah, so put 120 days there. 120. And what is, does everybody know what she was asking? Okay, everybody clear on that? 120, put 120 there.
Any other questions? We're gonna go right here.
Okay,
Okay, we got a question.
no side let's go.
So I have a question on the, if I do 3% on for the buyer's compensation, right? And I'm doing land and the land is like a small amount. Where can I put like, I want to get paid like $1,500 to $2,000 on a.
Because if she puts a 3% and then the land was 2,000, can she do a different amount?
No, you want it one or it's one or the other.
Right, but 3% on a $15,000 land is nothing.
Mhm. Just do modification.
Thank you.
But yeah, it's not or.
Hold on.
Yeah, correct.
I have a question on the lending standpoint for you guys under G2, where it says buyer does not have sufficient funds to pay broker or buyer intends purchasing. So are you guys now required to ask for like proof of funds? Or is it going to be like a communication with the lender? Like how are you overcoming that?
So. Yeah, I mean, if they have proof of funds, they come in and say, hey, listen, can you buy? You go, all right, well, how are you gonna pay for it? It's kind of like that. And then they'll say, well, you can make it a standard practice, but I think it's gonna be mostly the lender. They should have the lender that is verified funds.
So they just have to go off of our pre-qual letter because technically we're not supposed to send them proof of
Correct.
funds.
Yeah,
So
I
we
mean,
just
I would say that would be a good practice right there.
Okay.
Yeah, that was kind of vague, Bill.
Mhm.
Hold on, I'm coming.
I did. So this is a situational question for G2. So if I have a buyer and I'm checking
Exactly.
that box saying that buyer does not have sufficient funds to pay broker, and then in the description, it's letting the buyer know that we're submitting to the seller a request, for that compensation to be made by them.
Mhm.
But if they refuse, send the offer back with the counter, saying, no, we're not going to pay the buyer agent, but yet I've checked this box with my understanding already, signing this BRBC that the buyer doesn't have the funds.
He
Does
doesn't
that
have-
make me liable to
Yes, but
him?
you're not gonna say, so you're not gonna have exclusive where you haven't verified that they have the ability to pay or pay your fee and say that they don't have sufficient funds. You follow me?
So don't
But
check it.
submitting an offer,
So just leave it
if
blank.
you said, yeah, so if you submit an offer, right? And then on that it says the buyer doesn't have sufficient funds to pay the selling agent's commission, and you present the offer. So they're going off just the listing or the chance that the seller's gonna pay your commission.
But aren't we also getting the financial information of the buyer?
So,
at this time?
so that would be an issue, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So in making offers.
Yeah.
Depending on the seller, how does that hold me liable, knowing that information, financial information, the buyer to the buyer? That's all I'm asking.
Yeah, that's confidential information that PIP, that you don't give that out.
Oh, no, I'm saying the buyer to the buyer agent. What is my liability to that buyer as the buyer agent having all this information and they want that house? Am I still liable with all these checks, boxes checked to that buyer to follow through with that?
put an offer.
Yeah.
She goes for the buyer.
Mhm.
And her offer gets accepted. And then she's gonna be held liable for that. Well, what is, how?
I'm saying if you put a request in, then it's out.
Yeah.
And so it denies that, says that. But you don't have them says no, but the rest of the offer is accepted, then what it is.
Yeah, so that's what I was talking about earlier.
Okay,
You're,
so you're
you're,
good.
huh?
Okay, hold on, hold on, hold
Yeah.
on,
Hold on a sec.
hold on. We want everybody to be able to hear on Zoom what everybody's questions and answers are.
They got you down.
So-
We have to.
I'll get to, you ready?
So yesterday I attended the training and the way Barb explained it was basically it would be like if a seller doesn't accept the request to pay closing costs for that buyer, they can't obtain the property. So you find another property, or that usually when buyers get told, oh, well, they're not going to accept, paying your closing costs, they figure out how to get those funds if they really want that property. So she said it's basically up to your buyer, but us as agents, what do? Sometimes, just out of the kindness of our heart, we'll do the deal and just figure out some kind of negotiation.
Yeah, and then as far as compensation. I'll get you next.
First of all,
Oh, it's okay. Okay. We got,
so I want to circle back to the part of the presentation where you were asking that when you sit down with a buyer
Mhm.
and you ask them if they have the funds for the representation.
Yeah,
And so right now it's not standard practice for a buyer to pay for their representation.
correct.
And if you chose to work with a buyer that didn't have the funds for representation, my understanding is you explain to the buyer that I'm going to work on your behalf to present an offer to get the seller to pay Watson
Correct.
on your behalf.
Correct.
Okay. So you submit your BRBC
Mhm.
or your SPBB
Yes,
with your offer.
Yes.
So if with your RPA, you submit the seller to pay buyer's broker and the seller counters or rejects that, you don't actually have an executed offer.
you don't have an
So
excuse.
you don't have an agreement.
You don't.
So if the seller outright refuses to pay the commission, then the buyer can't buy that property. They can't just then say,
Go find another house.
oh, is that
That's right.
the situation?
Yeah, you're
Correct.
totally right.
Okay, so in the instance where you've written a 3% agreement
Mhm.
and you request your 3% with your offer and the seller counters back at, let's say, I'm just going to throw out a negative scenario for reference.
Mhm.
They come back and they say, no, we're only going to pay 1.
Okay.
So you go back to the buyer and you say, buyer, we agreed on 3. Sellers counter back at 1. Are you going to pay the difference? Because my broker won't allow me to accept 1.
Correct.
So how do we want to counter back? So then at that point, you're going to counter back at whatever number they agree or you're willing to agree, because there might be a scenario where you then agree to a 2.5 instead of the 3 if they don't have the funds to pay the difference.
Yeah.
Because if all the other agents that are showing and listing properties understand this, we also understand that you're going to be on the flip side when you're with the buyer. Like if you're the listing agent
Yeah,
and you've prepared your seller for this scenario, when you in turn work with a buyer, if
you're gonna know who the good agents are.
Mhm.
You're gonna totally know who the good agents are.
So one other question, will there be an update in Watson policy on some of these things that are going to be incorporated, and when will that be issued?
Before the 17th.
Thank you.
I think you answered your own questions. That's funny.
Well, I wanted clarification because I wasn't sure.
Yeah, yeah,
because
no,
if the buyer didn't have money or
Anybody?
if the seller
Anybody?
doesn't pay, then the buyer could turn around and buy that property.
Well, no, they can't. They have to go find something else on a non-exclusive. I mean, on an exclusive.
Correct. So if you have an exclusive agreement.
Yeah.
The seller outright either rejects to pay commission or won't pay an acceptable commission.
Mhm.
Then the buyer has to make the decision to make up the difference or walk from the deal.
Correct. You're totally right. 100% correct. Everybody got that? All right. All right. Hold on. Doreen's been dying to say. Dorian's been waiting for a long time.
Okay.
Wait, get the mic. Wait till you get the mic. Nobody can hear you.
Just trying to clarify it. Anything in life, you always keep it simple, Simon says. The whole logistics is they're trying to separate the buyer commission away from the seller. Keep that in mind. So just like when your buyers don't have enough money to pay their own closing costs, and you have to go and ask for closing costs, and if the seller doesn't want to pay it, they don't get that house, they move on. Same thing with the buyer commission. What you explained exactly is how it happens. If you can't come to terms and the seller doesn't want to pay it, he can't buy the house. It's that simple. It's that simple. That means, no, I'm trying to clarify. That's what I
Okay.
said.
No, yeah.
So that means I have to keep finding a house till the seller willing to pay.
Yeah, you're right.
It's that simple.
Okay, Betsy. Or let me hit, Greg, did you still have your question? Are you ready? Okay, good. In the back. Don't, Mike.
The only reason they can't hear you on Zoom. We want them to hear your questions on Zoom.
Okay, so I just want to clarify what Diana said
Uh-huh.
regarding you write on the buyer's agreement that the buyer does not have the funds to pay for commission. And you made the offer, you made everything work except for the seller paying your commission. So now this buyer cannot get that house because of your fault. Because you're not getting
No,
paid
it's
by the
buyer's fault
seller.
because the buyer doesn't have the money,
But that's what I'm saying.
but the buyer agreed to it.
But the buyer agreed to it, but now he's like, hey, you mean I can't get a house because you're not getting paid?
That's exactly right.
So where do we stand when that happens?
Go find him another house.
No, you're right. But this is because you're not getting paid, I'm not getting my house. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's the whole idea behind it.
It's just a question because I know
No,
that
yeah,
it's a scenario.
but you're totally right. So the only way around it is what? From a buyer standpoint, then which why we don't do it. No, we're not gonna do non-exclusive. We're doing exclusive agreements, right? With an exclusive agreement that pertains on non-exclusive, then they can go around it. Okay.
Okay, so we have one more question. On the lending side, when you guys are listing a property, you're still realistically going into that scenario with the anticipation that sellers are aware that standard practices should be to pay the buyer's agent, right? In order to get as many buyers to look at your home as possible, you should be offering them compensation. So at this point, it would be rare to have circumstances to where maybe they wouldn't be willing to pay any commission?
Yeah.
I guess like the question would be.
Hey, so we had a brainstormers meeting from brokers from across the country, and in that training we had brokers that have been a standard practice of theirs for years, and it's not as bad as you guys think it's going to be. All right, so it's not going to be bad. People are going to still want to work together. People still want to get paid. Right, there are going to be some bad apples in there. You're just not going to do business with them. That's a fact of the matter, and you're going to remember. You're going to remember those guys. There goes.
And I think it's just going to be on a case by case
Yeah,
basis.
yeah.
Things are going to come up.
I have a lot of close friends who are realtors in Florida, and I was actually thinking about getting my Florida license, and I went through all the trainings. They have this already set in place in Florida, and it's
Yeah.
working just fine. They have like 8 different agencies. So, I mean, it's already been working in other states. We just have to get used to it. That's it.
Yeah. You know, how many times have you guys seen where you've seen a listing and they took 6% and they gave you 2%? And you go, I'm going to remember that guy. Huh?
It's just going to be
Or
second
1
nature.
or 1.5? Yeah. Look.
Mine's kind of a what if question, probably far-fetched. You have a cash buyer, you sign your BRBC, you're deep into escrow. Cash buyer goes and buys a boat to celebrate his new house. And now he doesn't have the cash to pay you what he agreed to. We're going to cancel escrow at that point. Is he still got to pay us?
He's bound by that contract. It's a contract.
So it's going to be contacting the attorney.
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't want to see that happen, but I mean, it's a contract. It's an exclusive agreement. Well, he can't because he wouldn't spend his money on a boat, or the guy that went and bought a bunch of furniture. Well, is he saying prior to bringing the money to escrow, but all you got is a deposit in escrow. And so the money he's supposed to bring in a couple days before, he goes and buys a boat. I know you can't close escrow. That's what he's saying. So, but it would, Fernando, what he was saying is on the agreement that they have on this exclusive agreement, right? Can you go after the buyer for your fee? And the answer is yes. Okay, all right.
Okay, we have a question.
Quick question. For broker involvement, we talked about giving them lists of properties, but not actually showing them the properties quite yet. Do you remember talking about that?
Yeah.
Pardon?
That, if you gave a buyer a list of properties, but like, say, for example, you spoke to them over the phone and discussed the lease agreement for the solar and went over comps, but you never physically showed that, that would be eligible for.
It would be. It was in the part of that.
Had an exclusive agreement, and you had a discussion about that property, you would be able to. claim
And it
for-
clearly states that in the
But let's say
qualifications.
you just-
Yeah, then that doesn't, that's why just sending them a list of properties doesn't necessarily constitute.
For the auto prospecting?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
All right, any other questions?
Cheryl, hold on.
So I have a question. So on the buyer broker agreement where you can cancel it if you put it in writing in 30 days, well, what if you want to cancel it sooner than 30 days?
Yeah, give notice
Okay, in writing.
in writing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I forgot what I was gonna.
Well, because if you go to a buyer and say, I'm canceling, here's your 30-day notice, they're not gonna hold you to it. But you would hold them to it. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, if buyer and both agree
That they want to cancel it, then it doesn't matter. 30, you don't have to, you can do it in one day, right?
Correct. All right, William, hold on. It's a better experience for people on Zoom, guys. when We're doing it.
Sorry, so many questions. So on your listing agreement, when you sign, let's say the 3% for your seller representing your seller,
Mhm.
and then on the second line for representing a non-represented buyer, and you do that 3% again,
Mhm.
which your seller is willing to pay you, correct?
Correct.
Can you offer that 3% to the buyer's agent?
No,
Okay, just a question.
yeah, no, you can't. No, because then you go, so that's where, remember I told you, offers of compensation cannot be a consideration, can't be broker to broker anymore. It's gotta be broker, it's gotta be broker between principal. So if you think about it, it's either broker and the buyer or broker and the seller. Broker to broker, no more. That's why the cooperating, the CBC is taken out. Just think of it in a general perspective. There's no more negotiating your commission with an agent. You're negotiating your commission with a buyer or a seller, plain and simple. Yes. You can prepare them to, they may be asked to pay the fee for the buyer, for representing the buyer. Yes. Okay,
Quick question. I know we kind of discussed it earlier, but let's just say we check out the box on G2, where it says buyer does not have sufficient funds. And then we ask for the 3% on 16, right? And the seller says, we're willing to give you 2%. Do we do an addendum? But yeah, was that the addendum? I think 2%. Do we do it? Do we write an addendum
well,
to the
the seller
buyer?
would just respond to you, well, the buyer doesn't have the funding, right?
Yeah, but I mean.
So then then you're negotiating, you just take the 2% from the seller.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if let's say that they're willing to give you the 1% because they're gonna get a gift from mom.
They pay it through escrow.
Yeah. So I don't have to. The question is, do I have to write an addendum that now? No. Or if it's gonna be 2% instead of the 3%, do I write an addendum?
No, you don't have to, no.
No.
No, you're gonna do it.
Because they're offering 3%, right? But they're only offering. The seller's
No,
only giving you
so
2%.
the seller's gonna give you 2, right? And
Yeah.
You say, now the buyer says, hey, listen, I got 1%, I'm gonna give to you.
No. Because that's gonna be the same thing. I'm saying if the buyer still says, so now do I write an addendum that is gonna be 2% instead of the 3%? No?
No, because you're counter offer. There's a seller's gonna counter it.
Yeah, instead of 3.
I understand that.
Yeah, they're not gonna do it. So is there
Oh,
an
you're saying-
addendum?
So the seller is saying that on the listing side, it's gonna lower it from 3 to 2.
Yeah, and they don't have money to pay. Do I have to write an
You don't have
addendum?
to.
No?
Well, you can. Yeah. I mean, you don't have to. I don't know why you would do that. But you don't have to. Why would you lower your commission for the?
No, I'm not lowering it. It's, so then you just move to another property?
Yep.
Yeah, no, I'll take the 2.
Huh? Yeah.
Makes no sense. I just think it's two. Why am I gonna go spend another?
Well, I'm still not following you because if, and listen up, because I want you to have clarification. So the listing agent has an agreement with the seller, 3%. You have a buyer, you write up a buyer representation agreement, and they say they don't have the funds to pay you. And then you write an offer and you ask for 3%, right? And the seller says, I'm only gonna pay you 2%. That's it.
What I'm saying is.
You can accept that. You don't,
But I have a separate contract with a buyer. For the
you don't have to enforce it. No, you don't have to enforce it. It's kind of like this. It's kind of like this. Say the buyer says, hey, listen. The buyer says, all right, I'll pay you your 3%, right? Buyer says, I'll pay you your 3%. And then you write the offer and you go, and the seller, you write the offer to what, the seller says, I'll give you 2%, right? You don't have to go after that 1% for the buyer. You can lower it, right? You can lower it. You don't have to exercise that to do the 1%, but they already agreed to it.
BRBC, right? Separate contract.
Correct.
My buyer, and they're agreeing, let's just say that, well, actually, no, you're right.
Mhm.
Well, no, it kind of still in the middle. Now it's 2%. Oh, yeah, so now it's between the seller and myself.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, we have a question here.
Okay.
Okay, so what if we get like leads? Let's say that we do Zillow or Realtor.com and we barely even meet these people and I know we're supposed to do the BRBC, but can we do like the shorter 30-day, 3 properties only, non-exclusive, or does it have to be exclusive?
That's a great question. We're asking you to do an exclusive agreement with them. The other one's non-exclusive. The 3-dayer.
Yeah.
It's non-exclusive.
It's
So
non-exclusive.
my answer to that would be no. Okay.
Did you have a question? Yeah.
So if you're the listing agent, if you're on the listing side, are you going to require that the buyer's agent submit the either the BRBC or the PSRA before they show the house?
Yes, that's gonna be the MLS rules and it's gonna be law.
Okay, so what do we do with that in terms of like filing? Do we just keep those or we?
You keep it, and then once you get an accepted offer, you submit the one that came with the accepted offer.
Okay.
Huh?
Any questions over here?
Yeah, you have to have the agreement in order to show property. No, the listing does it. Listing agent, I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. Listing agent doesn't collect it. No, you don't have to give it to the listing agent. You have to have it. Now, so you have to have this agreement when you go out showing property. Do you have to give a copy of it to the buyer? I mean, to the listing agent? When you present the offer, you do, all right? And then let's say you're showing property and you don't have an accepted offer and you want to, somebody files a complaint or something like that. The board can call you and say, I want to see a copy of that agreement because you were not supposed to be showing property without an agreement. And if you don't have it, you're going to get fined. That's the MLS rules. You're not giving it to anybody until you get an accepted agreement. All right.
So you must have a buyer agreement.
You must have one of these in order to show property.
Bill, last question. What if?
You sure?
Yes, yes. What if on the RLA, your seller already signed the 3 and 3, 3 listing agent and 3 for.
Okay, so yeah, so we're supposed to, because the commission's coming out right now. If you have a listing right now, we sent out an email. There's the modification of listing agreement that you have to sign where it pulls out of the 3% out.
My question is this. I'm presenting the offer. I'm the listing agent. Hey, seller, you already signed this? And can I tell him or her that, hey, are you allowing this 3% to go to the buyer's agent?
No.
You can say that?
No.
You can, but you don't say it that way.
Remember, you can't talk about percentages, amounts, or anything. remember, I want you guys to wrap your brain around this. It's buyer and seller with buyer and agent, right? Seller and agent. It's no longer agent to agent. It's not cooperating, but we're not discussing commissions or fees from agent to agent, only with the principals involved in the transaction. That's what we're doing. All right. I think that's it, guys. Thank you very much for coming here. And we'll have some keeping you guys updated throughout the process. Good luck out there. You got it. Yeah.
These guys offer 2% for low volume. We're kind of, and ours.
Yeah. So